Well, we've heard a number of stories that the inmate POWs were surprised at the treatment which they received, certainly when they arrived here in Medicine Hat.
According to the National Archives of Canada, the second largest Canadian World War II prisoner of war camp was in Medicine Hat. Constructed in 1942, it was located on the modern-day Medicine Hat Stampede grounds. The camp reached a population of more than 10,000 prisoners, roughly the same population as the city of Medicine Hat in the early 1940s.
First German speakers came to this area in the 1880s, and there were significant numbers had settled in here, coming up primarily from North Dakota. So the idea apparently was that, well, we will be able to get translators, POW guards.
The Veterans Guard of Canada was responsible for guarding the detainees, made up of local men and veterans of World War I. Son of one of the guards, Bill Walls, says his father, Carl, used to tell him stories from the camp, and in particular noted the independence prisoners were given on the grounds.
Yeah, he was surprised that it was a city unto itself, that the actual inmates here, the prisoners of war, had such autonomy.
The camp included housing, kitchens, and recreation halls. The prisoners ran the camp and were in charge of their daily routine, order of law, and distribution of food and clothing. For prisoner Alphonse Meyer, one of the most surprising memories was the abundance of supplies.
We started to put that bread in our jackets again. And then the others said, "What you doing now? You don't have to do that. We get so much that we had to throw it away."
POWs came to Medicine Hat from all branches of Germany's armed forces, but one of the largest groups was soldiers from the African Corps.
Perhaps only a third of the German population were Nazis, and in the German army, the officers and some of the SS divisions were the hardcore. The rest were draftees.
Historians say that in order to work outside the camp, prisoners would have to show their intent to the guards and cross a series of fences. This crossing was banned by German administration, and if caught, a prisoner faced stiff consequences from his fellow inmates.
They would have to get through past the single strand, which was no big deal, but they had to then get over the 12-foot fence and to get over that, they were kind of battered and bruised to get over that because it was barbed wire and they had to crawl up and get over it. Canadians were not allowed to help them, but once they were in the interior part between the 12-foot and then the large barrier, which was the outside of the camp, then they were brought within the Canadian system.
Bill says prisoners who came across to the Canadian side were then protected and lived separately from the rest of the camp. He remembers his dad telling him about the inmates who had risked the crossing.
They were so thankful to be outside of the dogma of the Nazi. And he said they were so thankful to be away from that. And he said many of them created liaisons within the city. They even had girlfriends in Medicine Hat. They really did.
The Canadian archives show many prisoners were employed on farms and factories throughout southern Alberta.
A lot of the harvesting was still done with horses and binders and threshing machines. And so you needed people who knew their way around this sort of equipment. And a number of the German POWs were qualified and were allowed to go out and help with the harvest.
The POW camp records showed that the detainees were in charge of their own recreation and built a baseball field, ice rink, soccer field, and running track complete with spectator seating. They had gymnastics, boxing, wrestling, and an orchestra. The camp's recreation hall is still standing and is now home to the South Alberta Light Horse. After the war was over, Bruce said all prisoners of war were repatriated back to their home country. However, after returning to Germany, some of the former prisoners emigrated back to Medicine Hat. In fact, Bruce said he had an opportunity to meet one of the sons of a German POW at the Esplanade several years ago.
And he said his father had been just overwhelmed by how the Canadians, and specifically the people in Medicine Hat, treated him, an enemy soldier. And after the war, they went back to Germany. Whatever area they were from was devastated. His father had been a tradesman, a carpenter, electrician, and he got his girlfriend, the man's eventual mother. They got married in Germany and applied to emigrate, ended up coming back to Medicine Hat to raise their family.
For Go! On Shaw TV, I'm David G.